Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today, you guys can introduce yourself. Shelly, if you want to go first.
I'm Shelly McClone-Carriere, co-owner of Lion's Tooth Bookstore.
And I'm Cris Siqueira. I'm also co-owner of Lion's Tooth Bookstore.
So just to give people a little bit of background before we even get started, can you talk about what Lion's Tooth Bookstore is and sort of how you got to the point of creating it? And now there's like a physical brick and mortar store as well?
Lion's Tooth Bookstore is a very small, about 700 square foot building with a very curated book style. Chris always says that it's hard to give recommendations because everything that we stock, we like.
Sure.
And we have a very small cafe serving beer, wine, coffee, tea, some kids' drinks, and bakery.
So how did this all get started? I know it started as like a subscription service that started then into more and more, but why did you decide to even go into the book realm? Are you guys both very much into books and graphic novels?
So we started the project, we started the subscription program before we had the store. The plan was always to have the physical store. And we started the subscription as a funding effort for the store, with the goal to have the physical store. I used to have a very small bookstore in a cybercafe in the 90s. We used to have like places where you could go and use the internet. In Brazil, they were also called LAN houses, LAN houses, where kids would go and play games. They had like better computers with better graphics that they could play at home, and they could play online with other people. A friend of mine had a cybercafe like that was actually sponsored by Apple Brazil. It was really nice. They had like all the those green IMAX, you know. And then I had basically what was a room that was a small bookstore that was only graphic novels at the time, demo tapes, artist items. So I've always been involved in graphic novels. I was a translator. I am a translator. I translate a bunch of graphic novels to Portuguese in Brazil. And so this has been like my area of expertise. And Shelly, who is a very old friend of mine, is like a very big book person, more like in the store, like she curates the whole nonfiction, music books part of the store. We both had we're like, what if we combine the two things? And we also offer books for kids and expand to zines, which is something that I had in my store too, you know, but we both come from do-it-yourself, punk rock background in different cities, but we always kind of had like that kind of attitude. And we wanted to have a business that reflected that.
Kind of in that DIY style. It was just like, you know, a lot of books, graphic novels, and nonfiction. Like you couldn't find in Milwaukee. Like we have a lot of really great bookstores, but since People's Books Co-op shut down, I had a hard time finding some of the more political or radical or even alternative music. Like there's really not many places where you can find books about the dead Kennedys, or we have a book about Gigi Allen and the Juggalos, you know, just like real alternative culture.
Were you guys into the same types of books and like graphic novels you are now? Like growing up, were you very much like readers and into that sort of realm as well, or did this come later on in life?
When it comes to graphic novels, for me, when I was a kid, I read kids comics, never was very much into superheroes. I liked a little bit when all the superhero stuff, I don't retain any of it. The Dark Knight, I should know that. It's so when The Dark Knight came out, V and all those, like the graphic novels from the 80s came out, they came out in Portuguese in Brazil. I read all of those and I appreciated them. They were not like the flimsies or like the series, you know. I did write for a magazine as a reporter about comics and TV shows. So I had two jobs. One of my jobs was to write about the X-Files, which I loved, and the other one was to cover Spiderman. And I was covering Spiderman at the worst Spiderman phase in the 90s that you can imagine, when they changed his uniform to try to revive his popularity, you know, and Marvel was doing really bad. And then they made his uniform black. And I don't know if you know this, Shelly, but the uniform didn't work. So the marketeers at Marvel took the uniform and made the uniform a villain, which is which still exists, you know. So it's like, and also they also decided everything that the Spider-Man did, Peter Parker did that they didn't like. They said, oh, you know, this whole year he was a clone. This whole year. And so it was just it was worse than, it was like covering like the worst soap opera ever written. So I have zero interest in superheroes or any of that stuff, because even when I had the chance to work with that very closely, it was so ridiculous that I can't believe that, you know, anyway. But then very soon I started liking, at 17, I started liking Love and Rockets, which is still my favorite. And a lot of the good stuff that I read as a kid, a lot of the British kind of like Alan Moore and some of the stuff that the better Marvel and DC, or, you know, the other companies that spread from that, I still like. You know, everything that was not Spider-Man clone dating his girlfriend and nobody thinking that was weird. Everything that was not that, I liked. You know, and I still do. I think I developed the taste from that very early.
And, you know, and I hate to say this, but I didn't read much growing up. Like, I think I had a really hard time. I was like, my kids, like my parents would force me to sit down and read, and I would just sit there like, but I think it was just having a hard time finding something that really called to me, something that I could relate to. And especially I grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is kind of like a post-industrial town, you know, like with the liberal arts college. So like there was some arts and culture, but not much. But it was just like, I always had a hard time finding that thing that called to me. And then like reading like Jim Morrissey and the Doors when I was really little, and just like Helter Skelter, you know what I mean? Like silly stuff like that, just because like it was so different. And then I remember reading, was it Douglas Copeland's Generation X? And it was just kind of like, you know, just people that just kind of like left the world and lived off the grid and like kind of lived that bohemian type lifestyle. And then when I moved to Milwaukee, like 18, 19, Fuel Cafe had the most amazing, like Comet Bus, Eric Comet Bus, which was like a zine, like a fanzine of punks traveling across the United States. And it's just like, I would wait until they got the new issue of Eric Comet Bus to come in, and some of the Punk Planets, and like I was exposed to some more of that alternative culture that called to me, like Profane Existence. And I just remember sitting there and just talking politics with my friends and all of these new ideas, and it really sparked my interest in reading. And now I read a lot. I have 3 books. I have a book in my purse. I have a book on my bed. A book everywhere.
It's amazing.
It's just finding that thing that like grips you, you know, like.
Yeah, it's just amazing how it can change like that. Because I was very much similar while I was growing up, but I had a sister who read a ton. Like she read like every book that existed, and I was like sort of like sitting there with a book, just like looking over the top, like pretending to read, because I just wasn't interested in, I guess, the subject matter. But yeah, no. So I have a very similar thing. Starting the subscription service, and what were you guys doing? You talked a little bit about this, Cris. Like, what were you guys doing before you started this subscription service in the bookstore? What were you doing in life, and where were you at?
I came to Milwaukee to go to film school. So I'm in Brazil. I worked as a journalist. Briefly, I had that store, and I went to film school in Brazil. So I came to Milwaukee to go to graduate school, to go to school for film at UWM. And then I moved to the history department. And I made a documentary. I spent many years working on a documentary about the sideshow, and I traveled with the sideshow. So this is, it's a store, but it could very well have been a circus. You know, like I know I'm going to do something, you know. So I think that the store is healthier. thing right now. It would have been horrible right now with the pandemic if it was a circus. And I think that's basically my living, that the way I actually make my living and have been making my living since my 20s is being a translator. And I do translations for corporate, which I'm phasing out of corporate translations. And I'm only trying to concentrate and only do literary translations. And that's basically comic book translations. So I do, like recently I did Gilbert Hernandez, which is it's one of the Love and Rockets brothers. I've translated 3 of his books to Portuguese recently. And I've translated Joe Sacco, which is the comic artist that lives there in Portland, the one of Lionstooth's favorite. Translated Palestine to Portuguese. That's what I'm trying to concentrate on. Ideally, just do the store and just do translations of comics.
And for me, I moved to Milwaukee, when was that? 95? And I was going to live here for a year. And then I was going to move to like Seattle or something. And then Milwaukee just pulled me in. But quickly after that, I started meeting with some people in the Riverwest neighborhood where I lived, because we wanted to open up like a food hub, a place, a co-op, a grocery store where people could have access to, like, I was vegan and I couldn't find vegan food anywhere, especially in the late 90s. There was no Whole Foods.
That's hard in Milwaukee, yeah.
Anything like that. So just we opened up the Riverwest Food Co-op, and I was there for a long time, 14 or 15 years. And it just it really taught me, like, it's a community-based, consensus-based. And it taught me that, things don't always go how you want, but you got to roll with it. Like, especially running a business, you got to roll with it. Like, the power's going to go out and you're going to have to figure out what to do. Yeah. So it was just like surprise after surprise after surprise, and like that institutional memory of just like kind of just knowing how to act in those situations. And it was pretty interesting too. It was a very unique place to grow, because I had no financial experience whatsoever. But at 19, 20, they put me in charge of the books. So I was doing profit loss sheets, paying all the bills, and I like learned how to, like, the back end, like the not sexy part of running a business, like how the money and how to keep track of that. So it was a pretty interesting and unique way to learn those skills. Kind of learned and grew, like, 'cause at that time the co-op was it wasn't huge and it wasn't making a lot of money, but then it grew into $1 million business. So like, I grew with it. That's cool. Then I left there to, just cause I needed to change. Like, I needed something different in my life. So I took a job being a cafe coordinator at my kids' school. It's a Montessori school. So I was teaching 7th and 8th graders how to run their own business. So it was like their little microeconomy. Yeah. Which I learned a lot there too.
Yeah. I was going to say, what are some of the things you learned from kids when you were like, did it like reflect anything that you didn't even see? Because I feel like sometimes when you talk to kids and you are like, yeah, we're learning about this and we're doing this, and they like ask specific questions, and you're like, I never thought about that, actually. Did that happen to you quite a bit there?
All the time. And how I said being on my toes at the co-op, it was a whole new being on the toes, because it's just like, and it was them running it. Like, it's Montessori. So it's all like, I'm just there in case a fire happens, in case there's a blood, fire, whatever. But it's just like, and there's times where it's just like, I don't even know how you did what you just did to this computer, but we're closed for the day.
Yeah. But was there any specific kids or examples that you could think of that were like that? That was like a kid like came up with an idea or like said something to you that just like completely flipped your perspective on something?
Absolutely. There was one kid who he just came in and he just like, he switched the whole program. And I was just like, I don't know what you're doing. Just like redid it all. And then when it was done, I was like, whoa, this is cool. And they're great at that. I mean, like, you can learn so much
from the computer, Shell.
Yeah, the POS system.
We need a kid at the store.
No.
Bring a kid in, please.
Actually, we did that when did our first live stream. I didn't know how to do Facebook Live, and there was a teenager in the store. I was like, "Hey, teenager, come here!"
Oh yeah, that was our friend Isabella's kid. It was another
"Hey, teenager, come here, help us."
Because like at the store, is there a specific demographic of people that are coming in? Is it like teenagers, or is it all sorts of people, all age levels, everything? Have you noticed at all?
I think one of the biggest strengths of the store is that, and this is a very interesting balancing game that I think that we've been very successful so far with our mix, because we can only have so many books, right? It's not, this huge bookstore that you can go to the section of what you like, and that, philosophy, and you go to the philosophy books, you go to the Brazilian section book, like 3 books there. Like, so we stopped putting names to the sections. It was too depressing, It's very small, but there's something for everybody. Like, I feel like you get a family come in, and sometimes you get the dad going like, "Oh, my kid wants to look at this middle grade graphic novels," and they walk in and they walk to the music section and they go, "Oh, look at that," Or like we have like a book on a Weird Al, and right by a book on Dolly Parton. And it reflects our own interests that are eclectic. And when I say it's a balancing game, is because we have some stuff that is really radical stuff, and we also have stuff that is not for everybody. Like the graphic novels by Simon Hanselman are not for everybody. They have like drug, sex, and rock and roll and poop. Lots, so if you open it, it's not like if a kid opens it by mistake, "Oh, look, there's a kitty cat." No, it's like we have been able to have those things and have like very edgy stuff. Not only like Simon is like published by Fantagraphics, which is like a bigger publisher, but we have like zines that are really small and very edgy, but we have been able to have that in the same space, very small space, that we have baby books and books about, supper clubs in Wisconsin, and books by local artists, and then very radical political books too, So I think that has been very, very nice too. And I think in the end, there's something for everybody. But we should say, like, there's some demographics, and what would you observe of that, Shelly, of like the people that are coming in?
It's pretty diverse. I mean, it's all changing too with COVID, because it's just like, I don't know what, because we're in COVID lockdown, we're not, so it's just, I don't think we've had enough time yet to really know.
Yeah.
And I always like to think of like our little bookstore as kind of like the record store of my youth, like you go in and you flip through the independently published zines, or just finding that rare one of a kind, like thrift shopping, where you're like, "Whoa, I found this cool thing." So it's just, and I think we need to give ourselves more time because we've only been open for 4 months.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning we had a ton of kids. Right. And there were kids there. Kids, teens, kids. And that's kind of what we wanted. We wanted a space. We purposely chose not to serve liquor so that teenagers can come and hang out. So like 2 15-year-olds can walk there and like hang out in the store and read and like be in the place. But it's just with COVID, I don't know, like that's changed completely now that under 12 doesn't have the opportunity to be vaccinated. We've seen a very stark decline in under 12, like the middle grade.
Yeah, because I was curious if there was a lot of kids and youth like that are avid readers these days, because there's just like so much other stimuli. There's like, because when I was growing up, there was like only a certain amount of things I could do. It's like I could go outside, I could read, or like really hit. I mean, I could play with like Legos or something, but now there's like the internet, and that's like infinitely vast. There's cell phones and iPads. I was just wondering if there were still a lot of kids that were interested in books and reading and stuff.
I think that the graphic novels and that they got upgraded in parents' eyes. So comics used to be they're reading this junk,
Sure.
and they should be reading chapter books or,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there's like the French government gave every kid the equivalent of $350 to buy cultural items, and they could spend at a bookstore, and they're all buying records and manga, and the French intellectuals and some people at the New York Times apparently are all up in arms and going like, oh no, it's like they don't want to read Proust. Yeah, no, they don't. But I think that in the for the parents, at least they're not on the device. So like I think it's and I don't like the elitist view of culture anyway. I think it belongs in the 19th century. So I am thrilled to see that the kids really do like comics now, and that the parents are happy to see them read them.
Yeah.
And obviously, as with everything at the record store too, there's a lot of good stuff and there's a lot of stuff that is not so good, and there's a lot of commercial stuff and there's a lot of, and that I feel like what we try to do at Lion's Tooth is offer quality comics for kids, and sure, some of it is more commercial but it's never not quality, So,
And going kind of what Cris is saying, in my experience when I was in the classroom, was like these students would get these graphic novels and read them, right? But after they were done reading them, I would find them tucked in a corner drawing, like taking not just like the literature, but just like using the book as a stepping tool to their art, which is so beautiful.
Yeah. It's like it like leads you down a path, It's not like you're just done. And yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because I feel like my parents specifically, they made like specific rules to stay away from screens. Like I had this like punch card that I only could play video games for an hour a day. And they would like literally physically punch the card or whatever, and then I'd be done, and then I'd just have to go do other stuff. And so,
how are you ever gonna get good? Did you explain to them?
No, I'm never gonna beat anything. I could barely sign into this video game.
You don't get to phase 3 of Pac-Man with that.
Yeah, but yeah, it was interesting because I had to fill up my day with other stuff, like drawing and like artistic stuff and being outside and all that. So it was really good. And Cris, because I did see some of the stream that you guys did the other day, and you were talking about how on this sort of topic, how kids, they're always being like filmed and it's hard for them to like be themselves. That was like a very interesting thing to me because I've talked about that actually with someone recently, where it's like there's a lot of just fun shaming too. Like people will film someone to like make fun of them rather than to like, I don't know, not film them or just let them have a good time. I just want to talk about that because I thought it was really interesting since we're bringing up all this technology and kid stuff.
I do feel like the kids are in the surveillance state all the time. It's hard for us, right? Like it's like even now and then I get like a notification for a memory from like a Facebook memory. And Facebook's been around for about 10, 11 years. And I was already in my 30s, and I get a notification from Facebook, and I was like, oh, I would never post that now, and also like 2 likes. Oh, Cris, delete it. Why did you keep that thing up? Anyway, but like very personal stuff that I would never post now, that, and I think the kids are hopefully more savvy than this. But it's difficult. It's a difficult state of like, if it's not filmed, it didn't happen. And I think this comes from even when like camcorders, even before. I think that the Blair Witch, like I'm so 90s, but the Blair Witch Project was about that. It was made in video, because that made it more like, because they didn't have money, etc. But like it made it more scary. It made it like real. And even like the other paranormal, whatever, like that is like the video cams in the house, like it makes it more scary. But if it is in video, it's actually happening. If it's not, so it's not on the internet, if it's not documented, it's like it never happened. It's the way our memory is now, so if Facebook doesn't remind you that something happened, it never happened, and probably that same cycle happened with photography, with everything, with mass communication. But I do feel like there's a point to be made for alternative ways to keep memories, like journaling. And I think that's one of the reasons there's so many graphic memoirs. There's so many graphic diaries on Instagram from people, they're putting it on the internet, but they're trying to deal with their memories in a different way and just being, like filtering it in a different way. But yeah, I don't envy the kids today. I think it's a tough.
Yeah, and I need to, because I'm a parent of 3 teenagers. And, like I find myself, like I post pictures of them on the internet and I have them say like, no, please take that down. And I have to respect that, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, and even pictures that I took of them as babies and how Cris said, like those are the memories. It's like I need to get tech savvy and figure out how to save these things in a different way than on the web, because it's not my position to put other people out there.
I definitely don't envy it either. Growing up these days, I feel like the longer it goes, the more technology there's going to be and the worse it's going to get. So, but yeah, so
just stopping some of that too. Like as a parent, like I didn't let my kids have a phone until they were 13. Because then they don't have like as much access to that, and teaching them like what's out in the internet is going to stay there. Like you think Snapchat is erased, like you can take pictures of that. Like you can. That's always going to be there.
And also Snapchat, they get to keep that. So they're keeping that forever. They're logging that, for forever. But yeah, I didn't get a phone until I was in I didn't get a smartphone until my senior year of college. So I definitely live fine without it. And sometimes I don't want it anymore either currently. So, Shelly, do you still do roller derby? Is that still something you do?
That was Cris.
Oh, Cris. Sorry.
I was one of the 3 founders of the Bruce City Bruisers, the roller derby league in Milwaukee. That was in 2004. And I was more of an organizer than a skater. I made the logo that is still, it was supposed to be a temporary logo, and it's still used. It was like my claim to fame. And I made a lot of lifelong friends, but I haven't been involved for a while.
Did you? So you didn't skate in there, or did you skate?
I skated, but I was really bad. I never skated a game. I learned how to skate because I wasn't really good skating as a kid. So a lot of the people were like going back and skating, like, oh, you never forget it. And I was like, I have nothing to remember. And it was a super victory for me to be able to learn how to skate I was already 31, I think 30 or 31, to learn how to skate as an adult. I got good enough that it wasn't too embarrassing. I'll tell you, like, I never really learned how to stop. I never really learned how to do crossovers. I never was able to do the skating things that you can do and like kind of like chew gum at the same time and look at the camera. Yeah, I'm doing this. No, I can go from like point A to point B if there's a place that I can like hold in point B. If there isn't, I'll keep going all the way to Portland. So I learned how to roller skate. But I had a great time, and I did a lot of work with it. Like the whole organizing, at the time it was MySpace. I just Googled everybody's. I don't know if you know this, Shelly. It's kind of funny. I found everybody who was in the zip codes, Bayview and Riverwest zip codes, and sent everybody invites to the first meeting, and I didn't even know them. And I don't, but it was a regional thing. That was how. But yeah, rallied up 80 girls, Now everybody has like bad knees and injuries and because of that. But it was a wonderful experience. It's one of like, I had no friends in Milwaukee. I made a lot of friends. I mean, other than Shelly and the people that I knew in this group, I didn't have a lot of friends here. So it was great.
Yeah, I've seen like roller derby practice, and every time I watch it, I'm like, I get like, you get like so, because I picture myself in there, I would just be flying all over the place. There's no chance I would last in there. So how did you guys actually meet? Like, how did you two meet initially?
We have a friend in common, Carolina, who's like, so Carolina is from Brazil. She came to Milwaukee to go to film school at the graduate program. And she became friends with Shelly. And then she invited Shelly to come to Brazil. So Shelly went to Brazil with other people. And Shelly actually went to my house in Brazil. And that's how we met. Yeah.
Yeah, and Cris had the cutest apartment. It was decorated like perfectly mid-century. It was the cutest art everywhere.
It was tiny. It was almost as tiny as the store.
But I knew, I was like, this lady's cool.
So Shelly, with that experience, like, was that your first time down in Brazil, or did you go there before?
It was my first time down in Brazil. That was one of the beautiful things being a punk in the late 90s in Milwaukee was my apartment, my bedroom in my apartment. It was a punk house, and it was nasty and disgusting, but I paid $50 a month for rent.
What?
Yeah. So pretty much all I did was I saved money to be able to travel. You know, so I've been all over the world.
This explains why you were so impressed by my tiny house.
Yeah. So, and when I went to Brazil, there was like 6 of my friends that went down there. And it was so much fun. It was so beautiful. It was my first time being to South America, and just like, I have these memories of just how welcoming everybody was. Like when you sat down in a cafe, you didn't do like the US thing where it's like, this is my beer. You have your beer. You get one beer, it would sit in the middle and everybody shared it. And it was just
really?
Yeah, so beautiful. And I was just like, wow, look, I want to be here.
Is that common, Cris, just generally around the entire country? It's sort of like that?
Yeah. We call it an American glass. It's a very small glass that you get. And the beer is like a 60 millimeters, which is the size. It's I don't know how much.
Like a wine bottle.
Now, 16 ounces, right? And that gets passed around, and then put it in the little American glass. And it's very watery beer, so you can stay in the bar for a long time. We used to make like these big pyramids of the bottles, because the bottles are reused. The restaurant keeps them, so you did that. That's the way you drink beer in Brazil. Now they have like all the like here we have like the microbrewery movement and stuff like that, but they still make it in that format. It's the most popular format to drink beers in Brazil, especially if you're out of the house.
Because you go back there often? You go back to Brazil often?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, how has it changed over the years, even since you lived there full time till now? Has there been a lot of change, or? Oh
yeah, we have like a fascist president now, which we didn't have. Oh yeah. But it doesn't help. But we did like during the time I was here, we had the years of Lula presidency, and that changed Brazil radically. We had the emergence of a new middle class that we didn't have before. Changed immensely. And it was like, for a while, it was completely recognizable. I traveled around Brazil for that movie that I made with Brazilian carnivals, like to document Brazilian carnivals. And it was incredible. It was an incredible renaissance. So we're basically having in Brazil like now a civil rights movement going on. And now this government that we have now, it's like a backlash to that, but it wasn't like Brazil is very economically disparate, with a lot of like contrasts country, but with a very tiny privileged middle class. Now, after the Lula government, it empowered the lower middle class immensely. And that includes people of color, which is like a different conversation that we have here, because there's much more mixing, but it's still, so the Black movement in Brazil and, so that all of that in Brazil has blossomed to, it's incredible. And I think there's a break. It's kind of like, I feel like a person who doesn't really have a national identity because I'm an American citizen now, but I'm never going to lose my accent. And there's some things I'm never going to lose that are very Brazilian. But Brazil has gone through so much political turmoil that some experiences that my friends have had there, especially in the last, I would say like 5 years, are so different from my experience of Brazil that I don't feel like super like a Brazilian who's there now anymore. Before I was like, no, I know everything, like I go back every year. What are you talking about? Now it's like they really do have an experience that is different from mine. Now I live in Milwaukee where people go crime and I go, are you joking? Like it's like I can, it's to me, I feel like there's like I live in the most peaceful place. And I know this sounds horribly entitled because you feel like there's a lot of crime in Milwaukee and there are different types of pain and everything. But Brazil is it's so chaotic. It's a higher level of hell, if you know what I mean. So I feel like I have a very different experience. And at the same time, I'm not completely here. So it's a choice that immigrants make. If you're an immigrant that immigrated by choice, and from a privileged position, you arrived in a plane from a beautiful little apartment to another beautiful little apartment. You know what I mean? Like that's you stand in this in between world kind of forever. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. I love that I have the opportunity. I feel like I have the best of both. But you also have like COVID has been insane, and Shelly knows that we talk about it all the time because I read news from 2 different countries with 2 different propaganda machines and different experts with different opinions, and so it's been insane. So like Brazil, for instance, was like masks right away. Shelly and I went on a Zoom talk with some friends. And we had like a nurse friend was in the Zoom talk. What did she say? She was like, the masks don't seal completely. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a mask. I'm going to say, mind your own. We're going to put mind your own in the mask. But, and it's like, it has been really tough to navigate. And obviously it has been like a genocide of the poor people in Brazil, this whole thing, and I can't get over the fact that people here are not getting the shots when people are dying in Brazil. I can't. I'm never going to get over this. This is like that.
Yeah.
People in Brazil are like begging for it. And the United States, not only the government's not sending it, but
we'll turn it away.
Yeah.
And turn it. Yeah. And people, they just said like they're not going to do anyway. But, and then the people are just saying, no, thanks. No.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty insane because I got my shots before, like in May or something, like when we could first get them. And then in Oregon here, they rolled out this like incentive package basically to be like, somebody will win $1 million if you get a shot. And I'm like, just get it. Like even without the $1 million, at least you're alive. You don't need $1 million if you're dead. So get the shot because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do it. So yeah, it's very frustrating to me.
It's frustrating. But
anyways, back to your store.
There was a downer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's part of the world we live in right now, unfortunately. But so I wanted to ask, like, with the store, like, what mission did you set out to achieve when you like opened it and you had the initial idea? Like, what were you looking to do and like, I guess, achieve with the store in the community specifically?
I mean, I think we wanted a space that was open and welcoming to everybody, like a space where you can hang out, you can have a meeting, you can do homework while you're drinking coffee, and just being surrounded by beautiful books and art and conversation.
Because I think the subscription service probably helped a ton of people during the pandemic of like having stuff to do and like having something to look forward to? Did you get feedback like that? I'm sure you did from people that were getting the books.
Absolutely. It was like a present every month.
Yeah.
As a kid, I would get like messages from a mom being like, "When's it coming?" My kids ask me, "When's it coming? When's it coming?"
Yeah, that's the coolest thing about subscription services is like, yeah, you have something to look forward to, especially at a time like this. You have something to look forward to, something new, something different that you've probably never seen before. And the way you guys curate your selection, I'm sure it's a lot of stuff that no one has ever seen before or people aren't familiar with. So that is even more exciting. It's not like they're getting like Harry Potter or something that everyone knows and like has seen a million times.
I want to just like add, as we say that to the subscription thing, part of our mission too is to support artists. So one of the things you get when you get the subscription is original zines and things that are produced in partnership with Lion's Tooth. You get the book, but you also get a zine, which is like a risographed or Xeroxed magazine, art magazine from an artist, or a print, or a pen, or all of the above. And you get our newsletter that contextualizes and tells you who that artist is. So the subscription is still the best way to support Lion's Tooth because it's how we support these artists, because we get their stuff. So, and our newsletter goes to everybody who comes to the store. So the subscription is kind of like embodies our mission because it creates the community. Everybody's reading the same book. Once we can meet in person again, we'll have the book clubs, Also, it supports our original and the creation of original art.
Yeah, and something that was super cool with the zines, like Cris was saying, is like we did one with a teenager, and it was they were an artist, but they never knew or like anything about zines. They knew about zines, but they didn't know they could do it themselves. So Cris helped them produce it. It was like their senior project, and even working with some artists. Like one of the last ones we did was an artist who just stopped practicing and wasn't making any zines for, what did he say? Like 10 years, like 8-9 years. And we asked him, he's like, whoa, and got back into it. And like, that's super cool.
Or to make your first risographed zine, which is something that you don't do every day. All of this, our handle is always Lion's Tooth MKE. So LIONSTOOTHMKE. And that's also our website, lionstoothmke.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Why? But we are. With that name.
We have many books to tell you why you shouldn't be on Facebook.
Yes, we do. We also have a YouTube channel that we have like a couple of things there where we're gonna start putting more of our events there too. And it's, like I said, it's always Lion's Tooth MKE.
Yeah, no, I think the work you're doing is really great. Actually, the way I found you is through Dwellfant, because he was one of the artists that you guys worked with. And I had him on the podcast, and I saw he did some art and stuff for that. So it's working. The community is coming together. It's introducing people to new things. Me as well. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you both for coming on and taking the time to chat.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us.